It's springtime, as you can see by this lovely cherry blossoms here behind me. I wanted to talk about studying and preparing for finals. I think a lot of students get over anxious, and rightfully so, because there's such a amount of weight put on a final exam or a midterm. And being that it's spring and we're nearing the end of semesters at college and also high school, where finals are a huge part of their grades, it's sort of important to have a clear focus as to how to approach studying for finals. As I've told my students, even though I teach 7th grade, I constantly am trying to prepare them in thoughts of high school and beyond to college as to approach final exams more than just the week of, more than just the night before. Mainly, I want them to plan ahead. And so whether you're using an iCalendar or whether you're using an old-fashioned calendar, it's very important to give yourself time in your schedule to plan for ahead for studying for exams. And I find if you sort of try to adopt this approach that probably you'd have less anxiety, you'd be less upset with the last minute cramming that you're doing, pulling the all-nighters, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's fun. It makes for nice memories thinking back, but it's not fun when you're going through it. You feel dead tired and you think your brain can't work anymore. So let's look to the planning. If you're having your exam within the next month, what you want to do is, depending on how many courses, now in college, everything goes at warp speed. I mean, you really, 1 month you cover 9 chapters. So there's a lot of material to cover, and you can't wait within 24 to 48 hours to really do justice to that. When I went through college, we were told that for every hour of class lecture that you had, you should be spending twice that time, 2 hours, outside studying, reviewing, reading over the lessons, reading the suggested readings, this sort of thing, in order to keep yourself up with that class. Now, you know, first year college, you have a tendency to sort of maybe, ooh, I'm away from home and I want to party. And so you sort of get caught up in the social aspects, but it's all part of the learning. It's all part of the experience of being able to manage that work and play load. You don't want to play so much that the work sort of falls to the bottom and you end up getting, kicked out because your grades aren't there. And at the same time, you don't want to just be studying 24/7. You want to have some social aspects of your life. So you need to sort of plan it out. And one of the best tools to that, besides keeping up with your daily schedule of studying and taking notes and working, would be to plan in your schedule Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Plan on a month out. Say Mondays would be your math day, and Tuesdays would be your science day. Wednesday would be your history day, and so on like that. And leave about an hour or two to cover all the material that you've covered, say in the first marking period. For example, if my kids were having a final exam, and I often give them a final exam just to get their toes wet so they know what it's like to have a comprehensive final, even though it doesn't count that much, is to take that first week and take the first marking period. And so that first Monday, I would study all and review all the notes from the first marking period in that course. And then the second week on that same day, I would go with the second marking period, and I'd spend an hour or two, if you need it, to review all the materials in that second marking period. And likewise with the third marking period, the third week. And so that the last week is what you're studying, the most current material, so that you know it's fresher in your mind. You don't need to spend quite as much time on it, or you do, depending on how complicated it is. So just to schedule it, I think that's a good way to go. Each week you concentrate on a few chapters. So if it's not what's first marking period, second marking period, maybe it's chapters 1 through 10, 10 through 20, that sort of thing, depending on the number of chapters that you've covered in the year. And it also depends on whether you're only having a half year worth of material. So you can still approach it that way, cutting the material in half. Another thing is to, besides reviewing your notes and reviewing the suggested reading, another suggestion, besides setting up a planned schedule that way, would be to have, say, a study partner, someone who's in the same class that you get along with, that you're willing to meet in a quiet place, whether it's outside, with the sun shining down, or whether it's in the library, getting a study, area that you could be asking questions of each other. And another tip would be to come up with possible questions. Pay real close attention if the teacher or the professor says, this is going to be on your final exam. Make sure you're aware of this. Make sure you know that. You should be highlighting, starring your notes, that kind of thing, writing right in your book, whatever it is, typing it online. It doesn't matter the method as long as you're keeping track of what they're saying is going to be on the final exam, because it is unnerving. What are they going to ask you? You don't know. And it really depends on the professor. Sometimes they want you to know the overall picture. What's the scope of what you're learning? Do you get the big picture? Can you solve a problem given a certain parameters? The other thing would be occasionally get the professor who's nitpicky. They're out there, you feel like they're out to get you. And so, well, did you read that caption on page 149? I'm going to ask a question on that. Every once in a while you get those kind, and, you just have to do your best. Obviously, you're going to miss some questions periodically, and that's okay. If you feel confident that you know the majority of the material, that you've done the best job that you can with studying, that's all you can ask for. When I was going through school, I had I studied really hard. I had a study buddy. We were coming up with possible questions and this sort of thing. And I just had this teacher, just really was very tough, and I really studied for hours for this exam, and I got like an 88. I mean, so close to an A. You're sitting there going, oh man. He goes and he says to me, all right, Armstrong, sometime you're going to have A students, and sometimes you have B students, and you're a B student. Well, what can I say? I am, but I try my best, and I gave it my shot. And I feel like I did all I could do. And you just have to go in, be relaxed, knowing that I know as much as I know, and cramming at the last minute is not the way to do it. I got this idea mainly from my father, who was in World War II, and he flew for the Royal Air Force in England, and he was shot down over Germany in the very beginning of the war, in the early 1940s, and he was a prisoner of war for 5 years. And the first year, they were just so bored and depressed, and they thought the war was going to be over real quick, and it turned out it was going to last a lot longer. And so they started writing home, asking for books to be sent, because there was only one book in the entire camp of 4,000 men. And you can only reread a book so many times. So they started teaching each other their favorite subjects. My dad's favorite subject was math. And so they would sort of, just to keep their minds stimulated, they'd come up with problems and this sort of stuff. He even started his own little weather station, and he made his own aneroid barometer, from tin cans. It was pretty impressive. But anyway, as the books started coming in, they started setting up classes, and they became the teachers, and they set up temporary little classrooms on crates and whatnot, even asking the Germans, for space. And they were happy because they kept them occupied and hopefully not thinking about escape. And so they were very, amenable to that. And they ended up writing to the Red Cross, and the Red Cross sent them books, and they even went so far as to write to the universities, University of London, Cambridge University, Oxford University, and professors there started sending syllabi so that they could study different courses and different classes. And eventually it came down to they actually were allowing them to take tests, examinations, and sit for them. And it was a pretty impressive program. Eventually it was called the Bob Brier University. And I've done a fair amount of research on that. And what was interesting was they used to spend every day of the year they were studying, because this kept them occupied. It gave them hope that they could eventually maybe do something when they got out of the POW camps. And one thing, the whole reason why I'm telling you this, is one story my dad told me was that he had an upcoming exam. He was very nervous about it. So 3 weeks ahead, he pretended to look like he was escaping, but not enough that they'd actually shoot him. And so they took him off to the isolation, and he was in solitary confinement for 3 weeks. And he spent those 3 weeks with nothing in his hands except what he had in his, he could stuff into his jacket and stuff. And he would spend those 3 weeks studying, isolated. Nobody would bother him. And he was determined to do well on this exam. And he did fine. He passed it. Later on, he ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Oxford for his dedication to this program that they started in POW camp. And he went on to become a physics professor in the United States, which is why I'm here. And so I wanted to share that to you, because even in the worst circumstances, if you have enough drive, if you care enough about what you want to do and what you want to be, then you will make the time. Whether your friends are off partying or not, whether you're, in the middle of the worst season ever, you need to make that time for yourself. And whatever it is to eliminate your distractions is the most important thing that you can do for yourself. If you need to play music while you're studying, go ahead. If you need peace and quiet, be there. If you need to go to the library first thing in the morning on a Sunday, go to the library first thing in the morning, spend all day there. But you need to take breaks periodically so that you keep your mind clear. And know that you gave it your best effort. And the last parting advice my father gave me was this. The last bit of advice is to make sure that you do not study within 24 hours of a test. You either have given it sufficient time or you haven't. And if you haven't, you have to be willing to accept that you haven't studied enough and that you deserve whatever grade you get. And I think when you do that, you go in with a sense of peace. I'm as prepared as I can be, and in the long run, I think you'll find that you do much better over your exams and you're not quite as stressed out. It just gives you an inner peace knowing that you've done the best that you can do. And good luck to you.